Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So you've seen the picture, so that's why I don't have a foot in this guy right now. So in this video is going to be two different sizes that you're going to be, actually, it's going to be for both kids and women. Some women have really super small feet and they can actually wear a kid's size. So I'm going to put that in the video as well. So that's helpful. This first one is made with a 4.5 millimeter. The patterns for the two sizes are exactly the same. They're just done with different hooks. This is a 4.5. And this measures at 9 inches long. So this one is going to be for age 7 to 9. And it'll fit shoe size 2 to 5. So, I mean, some it's going to be loose, some is going to fit just right. It's a broad spectrum, and I get that, but that's what it says on the chart. So I'm just following a chart. It will also fit women's size 6.5 foot. So that's it there, from heel to toe. This other one is smaller, and it's done with a 4 millimeter. And it is 8 inches long, so that will fit size 11 to size 1, which is kids about 5 to 6 years. So that's the sole from heel to toe. Kids age 5 to 6 years, or it'll fit a woman's size 4 to 4.5. Or kids 11 to 1. So the two different sizes in the video. Let's jump right into this. Alright, so I decided to use a green background so you can see my white better. So I'll make a slip knot. We're going to chain 5. And we're going to do 4 single crochets back up. You're going to need stitch markers too, because I'm going to be marking spots just like I did with my other slipper. I'm going to be marking spots. And my gauge, by the way, just to let you know, so for the 4.5 millimeter hook, my gauge is 4 rows for every inch, which is, I'm loose. As far as I'm concerned, I'm loose. And every 14 stitches is 3.5 inches. You're going to have an opportunity where we're going to have 14 stitches across. You're going to have that opportunity to measure your gauge at that point. So trying to situate my camera properly. And for the 4 millimeter hook, my gauge is for 16 stitches across is 4. And is there a spot? No. Yeah, there's gonna be a spot where you're going to be able to measure 16 stitches across if you're using a 4 millimeter, and it should measure at 4 inches. So we'll do that at the appropriate places, just so you know that you've got your gauge properly. Now, my slippers are all kind of loosey-goosey on the foot. Because I'm a loose crocheter. I like it that way because the kids can grow into it. It's not just fitting your foot for a year, because we all know how fast kids' feet grow. So your next 2 rounds are just going to be 4 single crochets. Chain 1 and turn. So we're just going to chain 1 and turn through the whole project, and I know that you're probably aware I'm not going to say it every single time. Nor am I probably going to put it on the screen every single time. So, round 4, you're going to do 2 single crochets in the first one. Anything that you see written on my channel with brackets means the same space. So you're going to do 2 single crochets in here. You're going to do 2 single crochets and then 2 single crochets in the last. So we're increasing, not every row though. In between the rows that we increase, we're going to do 2 rows of just 1 single crochet in each. So this should be 6 stitches, 1 single crochet in each stitch. Chain 1 and turn and do it again. So for my pause screen, so now that I've told you that, for my pause screens, when I put up the increase, it's going to be followed by the 2 rows of what you have to do after that, so I don't have to go. This is probably going to be a long video, so I'm just trying to keep it shorter. So you're probably going to see like 2 or 3 things on the pause screens at a time. So we're on round 7, and it's an increase row. So 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 4 single crochets across, and 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And then you can do 2 rows of 8 single crochets. Your next round is going to be an increase row, so 2 single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 6 single crochets across, and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And for the next 2 rows, you're just going to do 10 single crochets, 1 in each stitch. So this row is going to be different-ish. Do 2 single crochets in your first stitch, do 8 across, and then 2 in your last stitch. So instead of doing 2 rows of the 12 single crochets, we're just going to do 1. Every time I have this turning over stitch, I got a piece of thread I keep getting stuck on. Next row is an increase, so 2 single crochets in your first stitch, 2 in your last stitch, and we're going to do 10 single crochets in between. So your next round is going to be 14. If you're using a 4.5, we can measure this row after. So do your 14 single crochets and then we'll come back and measure the row, see where your gauge is at. That's my 14. So I don't have a gauge thingy. Actually, I do. I just don't know where it is right now, to be quite honest. I did keep it in my sewing kit, but it's not there, so I'm not sure where it is. I do have one, but it's just easier for me to use a measuring tape. It's just the same. It's the same stuff. So this whole row, so my gauge is still 3.5. So, I mean, your gauge is going to change from day to day. Stresses, non-stresses, caffeine, no caffeine. You know, it does change your tension. But mine's still sitting at 3.5. So, that's all you got to do. For a 4.5, 14 stitches was 3.5. That's my gauge. So, gives you a better idea of how, if you're on the same page as me, or if yours is a little tight. You know, your slipper's not going to be as loose on the foot. Your slipper's probably going to fit perfectly if you're a little tight. Like I say, I make all my things when I design them a little bit bigger because, you know, kids' feet can be chunky. They can be, I mean, let's face it, the model, that's a pretty skinny foot. Not all kids' feet are that freaking skinny. Like, they're chunky. I got chunky feet and I'm a grown-up, but I'm chunky. So let's move on. So the 4mm hook people, you're just hook people now. You can measure this row coming up. So our next increase gives us 16 stitches. So 2 single crochets in your first stitch, 12 single crochets across, 2 in your last. Last turning over stitches can be difficult, so you're gonna do 16 stitches, and then we can measure for 4mm hook people. So that's my 16 stitches. And then we measure again. Now, my measurements aren't going to be the same because I'm not using a 4mm, I'm using a 4.5. So, but when you measure, it should be 4 inches. Now, mine's going to be a little bit bigger than 4 inches because I'm using a 4.5. But if you're using a 4mm G hook, 4 inches is what you need. And then I'll just show you for the rows. So I went 1 inch every 4 rows. So these are 2 rows. So 2 and 2. If you just measure, that should be 1 inch. So that's how you do your gauge for that. Do you see what I mean? Sure you do. So that's how you measure gauges, and I had people ask me about my gauge for my adult slipper, and I didn't do any of that. And I don't know why I didn't do any of that. I just didn't do any of that for my adult slipper, which was really wrong. I should have done it. So what I want you to do is, first of all, before we do our next row, is find some green. Of course, I don't have green here. Find some green stitch markers. Oh, I do have green. Find some green stitch markers. These look so close to being yellow. So the stitch marker colors we're going to use are green, pink, and blue. So if you want to get all your colors out, we need to mark places. And that's going to help in the sewing of it after. So for starters, get your green ones out. Your next row is going to be 16 single crochets, so 1 in each stitch. And we're going to mark this row here. The reason I mark the rows is It's just a lot easier to do a video that way, to show you where we're folding it, what we got to do, where we got to sew, where we don't have to sew. And to be quite honest, it's actually easy for me to design it that way too. And then mark this row when you're done at the end. And there we go. Once your rows are marked, I want you just to do 2 more rows of the exact same thing. 16 single crochets. And I will see you on the other side. So that's my 2 rows of 16 single crochets. So let's chain 1 and turn. We're going to put pink markers on this row. This row is going to be a decrease row, and that's why we're putting markers. So I want you to do a decrease. We can put markers on after we do it. You're going to do 12 single crochets across, and you're going to decrease the last 2. We are on round 24. You're going to decrease the first 2 stitches. You're going to do 10 single crochets across and decrease the last 2. You're going to put 2 single crochets in your first stitch. You're going to do 10 stitches across and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. My blue marker here, and put my blue marker here. And in case you're wondering, this is going to be the heel part. So folding the blue to meet the pink is where your heel is. We're going to be doing that part in a minute. I just want to increase one more time. So 2 single crochets in this stitch, 12 single crochets across, and 2 in the last stitch, and that gives you 16 stitches. So here we're going to start our sole. This is for our foot, but when we do our measurements, and I'll show you after, for the 4mm and the 4.5, it's still the same amount of rows. It's 18 rows of half double crochet. So you're going to have 16 half double crochets across, and you're going to do this for 18 rows. And then we'll come back and I'll show you how to measure before we carry on, so that you know whether you need to rip out a row or add another row, or what you need to do based on your child's foot. But for now, let's just stick to the 18 rows, because I don't know what your gauge is, right? So let's stick to 18 rows, and then I'll see you back here after, of half double crochets. So this is what my 18 rows looks like. This is where the size of the foot, this is where you can change the size of the foot. So We need about 8.5 inches. So measure from your blue marker down. Let me zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. You see my measurements. Okay, so from the blue marker row down to here should be 7.5 inches. Just remove an inch off of what you actually need, because when we switch to the gray, we're going to be putting that inch on before the fold. And I'll show you again. That's an inch worth of gray. So I'm going to take out my chain 1 here because I'm switching to gray. So this is literally my half double. And I'm just gonna add my gray. You can put it, you can make a slip knot here if it's easier for you. And I'm gonna do my chain 1. So I'm gonna carry both colors around with me so I can weave in, because I don't want to make it. Actually, I did this for my last one and you couldn't even tell there was a knot. I know. It's not right, but you'll never know the knots here. So I made, it's not a knot. I just tied these two once. I didn't actually make a knot. Just to secure it. I'm still weaving. So we're going to decrease the first two. We're not using half double crochets anymore. We're going right back to single crochets. Let me zoom in more if I can. Oh, not as far as I can go. So we're going to decrease the first two. I'm weaving in at the back. We're going to do 12 single crochets and then we're going to decrease the last two. So we're going to decrease this row. So decrease first 2 stitches, do 10 single crochets across, and decrease the last 2. Decrease the first 2. 8 single crochets across and decrease the last 2. So that's our toe area. And you'll know why when we fold it. This is still going to be on the under part of it. You're going to know that after. Sorry, I keep going off camera. I don't know why I'm leaning so much. I mean, other than it's 2:49 in the morning, but... okay, so round 53. Doesn't feel like we've done that much. We're going to increase. So 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 8 single crochets across, and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Your next round is going to be another increase row, so 2 single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 10 single crochets across and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 12 single crochets across, 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Alright, you should have 16 stitches again. That seems to be our number, 16 for the total width. If you're making this and you find that you need it to be a little bit wider for a little bit of a chunkier foot, then obviously you're going to go maybe 18 stitches. But I made this pretty loose, like I've suggested twice now, I think, in the video. So I did make this loose. If you are a tight crocheter, it's probably just going to fit. Like your child's foot's not going to have room to grow. You're going to do half. We're going to do half. We're starting our half doubles. Same as this, but you're only going to do half of it. I'll tell you why. I'm going to put my foot here where the heel. So the blue, oh gosh. Here, that might help, right? So the blue and the pink are the heel. So I'm going to put my heel part way. So this is going to be the mouth part that comes up, the bottom jaw. This here gets folded over. So some of your gray, an inch of gray, is still on the bottom. The reason I say do half is because it's going to bring you up to the ankle. So it's just going to cover the top of the foot, and that's the halfway mark. That's why I say half. So because I did 18 rows in my half double, I'm going to do 9 rows in my half double in the gray. So I've got my 9 rows. So when you fold it, the natural fold, it should fold naturally. You're going to have an inch left on the bottom, and all this is going to be even, and it's going to go about halfway up where you did your half double crochets before. So we're going to continue to increase. I want you to do 2 single crochets in this. So we're back to singles. 2 single crochets in the first stitch, 14 single crochets across, and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. Two single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 16 across. And then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. You should have 20 stitches, and I want you to do 5 rows of 20 single crochets. And I will see you on the other side. Zoom out again. So the 20 rows, why it looks like this is because obviously it has to go around the ankle, so it has to at least match, like it has, we have to sew this to the white, right? So the white comes out, it's hard to see the other side. The white comes out here. So this has to come out wider than the white. So just letting you know why we do what we do, why I did what I did, is because this needs to come up and get sewn to that. So it needs to look like that. Moving on. We're going to start decreasing again. Now that we got that part done, we're going to do a decrease. You're going to do 16 single crochets, and then you're going to decrease the last 2. Round, what are we on? 77. We're going to decrease the first 2. You're going to do 14 single crochets and then decrease the last 2. You're gonna you're gonna decrease SC2 tog. You're gonna decrease the first 2. You're gonna do 12 single crochets and decrease the last 2. Decrease the last 2. So we're not just doing 1 row. This next row is going to be 3 rows of 14 single crochets. So this is what you should have at this point when folded over, still with the inch on the bottom. When folded over, it should bring you up to your blue stitches. If your gauge is as loose as mine, if your gauge, it doesn't have to. Like, I mean, if it's here, which it should be for the 14 millimeter, it should be a little shy of the blue stitches, but as long as it's close to the blue stitches, you're probably in pretty good shape. So this is where we start doing the jaw and the head of the shark. If you're not quite at the blue stitches and you're still kind of way down here because you crochet really super duper tight, I would do a couple more rows to get you closer to the blue. That just lets me know. This has multi purposes. This also lets me know where the heel goes, but it also lets me know where I need to start making the jaw for the head of the shark. So I'm currently in the right position. So I'm just going to continue to decrease. So SC2 tog the first 2 stitches and then do 10 single crochets across and then decrease the last. You're going to decrease the first 2. You're going to do 8 single crochets across and decrease the last 2. So that's my 3 rows. I'm going to continue to decrease. First 2, then I want you to do 6 single crochets and then decrease the last 2. We're going to single crochet the first 2. You're going to do 4 single crochets and then single SC2 tog the last 2, decrease the last 2. I'm writing it as SC2 tog, but it's the same thing. You're going to SC2 tog the first 2. You're going to do 2 single crochets and then you're going to decrease the last 2. And for the next 2 rows, you're just going to do 4 single crochets. We're at his nose now. Now we're going to increase. We're just about done. We're at round 97. There's 102 rows to this entire thing. So we're going to increase now. You're going to put 2 single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 2 single crochets, 1 in each, and then 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And then you're going to do 6 single crochets. You're going to do 2 single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 4 single crochets across and 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And then you're going to do 8 single crochets. You're going to do 2 single crochets in the first stitch. You're going to do 6 stitches across and 2 single crochets in the last stitch. And you're going to do 10 single crochets. That is it. This here, you need to fasten off with a sewing tail because we're going to fold it over and you're going to sew up and down. But you're not going to sew across, so you just need enough to sew up and down both sides, which isn't a whole lot. Alright guys, this is it. This is when the magic happens. So this is what you should have. I know, super duper funny looking, isn't it? Just like my adult size slipper. It's hard to make heads or tails out of what in the heck is going on with this. Alright, we're not going to do anything with the nose yet. The first thing we have to do is fold over our white. So I need you to fold over. I'm going to zoom back in here. I need you to fold over till the pink and blue markers meet. It'll naturally fold over, like you'll feel it you won't actually have to try to match up your markers. You'll feel it. But these technically have nothing to do with anything. Hear me out. Okay. You're gonna sew. You're gonna wonder what in the heck. I just wanted these here to know where to fold it. Like I said, it helped me when I was crocheting it to put the markers where the heel's gonna be, and it helps when we go to sew it for the video as well. But these really can just be taken out now, because you're going to sew starting at the green marker down. You're going to pop over here and you're going to go down to the green marker. That's it. So these can be taken out as you go. Where's my white? So I'm going to get some white. And make a slip knot on one end, thread my other end. Now the green markers are super duper important, and the blue marker was important for measuring and stuff like that. So it's not like I wasted your time putting in the markers. So just make sure you're folded properly. So I mean, if these don't matchy, it's fine. You can see, let me take these out. You can see when you fold it how it measures up. If I'm on camera, you could probably see it better. So when you fold it, you can see how the sides match up, the shape. So it's not like these need, the blue and the pink need to be exactly on top of each other. So this is the inside, so I wouldn't really worry about what you're doing as far as knots go, because we're going to be flipping this right side in. So go through the slip knot that you made and pull that. I like to make an extra knot. And then you're just going to whip stitch this. So here's a piece of advice that you don't need to take if you don't want to. I am not a sewer, but when I didn't sew across here. I just kind of scooted. However, what I did do was when I got here, I kind of went pretty deep. I'm struggling to stay on camera here. I went pretty deep, so I stayed close to the edge here, but I came in here when I sewed, so it rounds your heel off better. If I can show you. Instead of your heel being square, it rounds it off like that when you go in deep like that. So when there's an actual foot in this, it's more rounded and not square. I didn't do that with my last one, but anyway, back to what I was doing. I know sometimes I talk too much. So staying close to the edge along the sides, you're just going to whip stitch this. Or whatever stitches, if you know multiple stitches and you want to use another stitch, I don't know anything like that, so I'm just going to whip stitch. So I just made a small knot there, and then I'm just going to weave. So this is what you should have. You're going to fold this back. Here, I got to do it on the other side. I'm right-handed. So I want you to fold this now that it's all sewn together. This is where you sewed it. Fold this back. This guy gets folded. So again, you'll feel the natural fold that this does. It folds itself. You should still have gray on the bottom. So this will be all matchy-matchy on the sides. And that's where you're going to sew. Let me get some of my... you can sew down and around if you want. I chose not to because I had done that with another slipper that I had made, and it seemed to be off. I don't know why. Keep in mind, I don't sew very well. So you are going to sew. This is still flipped back. You're going to sew up the sides, and I mean keep to the edge. So when you get to the part here where it sticks out, you're going to the edge and to the edge, because you need that concave for the foot part. So don't go in and sew like this. And if we come back down a little bit, you might be able to see what I'm saying. So don't go in and sew like this. You need to go edge to edge, like that, on both sides. That way you get that concave for the foot. All this is, again, this is the toe. So if you want the toe to be rounded, go in on your corners deeper than, because here you're just doing the edge, right? But here you can go in on your corners to make your corners rounder and not square. And you're going to sew all the way up the side. And you're going to come past the green marker about a half an inch, or like a centimeter. Like literally a centimeter. That's about a half an inch or a centimeter. Well, actually that's about a half a centimeter. So I would come in like you're just going to do it by like 2 stitches. Come past the green marker by 2 stitches, because this is a kid's foot, so I really don't need any bigger than that. And then that makes, let me grab my slipper. That is this part right here. So this is your heel, and then that's this part going up. Let me put my foot in here. I always like to show you what you're doing so you can decide what you want to do after. So just past the, so here is the line. Wow, that's hard to see, huh? Here's the line from where you sewed it. And then this here is just past the green marker. That's the spot right there. That's the spot I'm talking about. So you have to go past, that's why this is laid down like that. You have to go past the marker by like 2 stitches, by like that much. And that's why we flip it back like that. So up to about there, this row. Now this is going to be inside out, so if you wanted to kind of scooch across, you can do so. I just preferred to make a couple of knots and do some weaving and start a whole new thing. My thread also kind of splits if I sew a lot, so anyway, get your other side done to around roughly the same spot past your white marker, and I will see you when we're all done, and we'll move on. So this is what you should have. We're gonna take our markers out for starters. And then we can fold this inside right. So there we go. That's your slipper so far. So now that we've got it right side in, now we can fold our nose down and then sew up the side. So down the side, we're going to be using these stitches, so we're not doing anything with that. So once you come back around, make a little knot and do your weaving. I'm just going to weave right up where I just sewed because it's really tight. Voila! That's our little shark's nose. So next you will need red. We'll get the mouth done, then we'll do the eyes. So get your red and I'll meet you right back here. So I've got my red. I'm going to make a slip knot and I'm going to reattach. I'm going to reattach right down here. I'm going to put another single crochet in there because I'm going to use where I reattach to do my slip stitch when I come back around. So right here is a raw edge up here and down here. The only spot you have stitches are these four right here. So you're just going to stick your hook in wherever you can. Now there is generally 2 spots per row. So it's not like you have to struggle. An avid crocheter, you already know. Beginners, just stick it in wherever you see a spot. There's not going to really be a count on this, and the counts vary depending on, you know, where you're sticking it. I don't know where you're sticking it. So I've got 4 stitches up here that I can follow. When I get to the nose part, I'm gonna be using only part of the stitch. So meet me, stop right here. Don't go past here. And I'll show you what I do up here. So I'm at the part where I go from my white to my gray. Again, it's a raw edge. There's no, but I would just keep that tight. Make sure you pull on that tight, because it's kind of the corner of the mouth type deal. So I'm currently holding this upside down. There's my nose. Once you get up to the nose area, I'm going to put one more in here, and then I'm going to pop across, and I'm only using, I want to use the front loops only for the red, because the back back loops I'm going to use for the teeth. So these back loops I'm going to save for the teeth. So front loops only. For beginners, these are your front loops. I know it's gray, it's really hard to see. It's like trying to show you something in black. So now that I've done a few, you can see your back loops are still right here. And that's what I'm going to put the teeth into, are these back loops. So that's the plan, Stan. So I'll continue back around till you come back to where you attached. So I'm just going to put a last stitch in here, and I'm just going to slip stitch to the first stitch that I put in there. You don't need much, there's no sewing involved, you're just weaving. But I like to tie my start and my stop straggler just for added security into a double knot, and then I weave. So when I pull, this knot kind of gets sucked down in there, so I don't have to go very far because I just made the knot. So next we need our white because we're going to make our teeth. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to make a slip knot and you're going to reattach. So our teeth is a pretty easy peasy repeat, which I'm not going to make all the teeth with you, but I will put the repeat on the screen. So you just need to find a spot to reattach. I'm just going to reattach into my reattached spot that I used before. So we're going to make a tooth right here. We're going to start right away by putting a single crochet in here. No, we're not using where we reattach. We're not going to use that as a single crochet. We're going to use that as a something we're going to slip stitch into later. So put a single crochet in here, and then I want you to put a half double in the same space. You see these 3 bars that I just pulled through for my half double? 1, 2, and 3. These 2 here, 1 and 2, you're going to need those in a second because we're going to chain 2 and we're going to picot, which means you're going to come down to those 2 bars and you're going to go into them. Then you're going to pull through and slip stitch. And then put another half double. And then a single. So that picot gives you the pointed tooth. This is how many stitches you skip is completely up to you. I skipped 3. Now I have to pull this back to find this one here because this is, if I just left this like this, there's kind of a hidden stitch right there. So I count 1, 2, and 3, and then I go into the 4th one and I do it again. A single crochet, a half double, chain 2, picot, a half double, and a single crochet. So that's the spacing for the teeth, but if you need to skip more, then go ahead and skip more. It will kind of pull this together a little bit and make it not so floppy, so skip 3 into the 4th stitch, single crochet, half double crochet, chain 2, picot, half double, and a single. So You don't have to do your teeth like this. If you know a better way to make teeth, then you can use it. I'm going to put this pattern up on my pause screen, and I will see you on the other side. So I'm up here at the nose area, and we did all this red in the front loop so that I could have the back loops. So when you skip 3, 1, 2, and 3, you go into the back loop to put your tooth. And right now it looks like it's stretching out, but once you have everything done, it'll be fine. It'll look perfectly fine. And you only end up managing a couple of them up here anyway. But too, if you want to put more teeth at the top, oh, stuck on something, then you can do that too. I mean, you could probably see on yours. So it looks like I've got 4 teeth at the very tippy top of the nose, and you really can't tell that it stretched that out. And besides, this red comes down, that's his upper lip, right? You ever notice in Jaws, the reason okay, I'm gonna be stupid now. The reason I chose to do this is because, do you ever notice, especially in the movie Jaws, when you see a shark open his mouth, it's like his top lip, not that he has a lip, but it's like his top rolls right back and you can see his gums, and it's like really spooky. That was the whole point of this. I know that's stupid, but it's different. So now I'm at the end of my nose. I go back to just doing it in the red. So I'm coming to the end. I've got to do my skip 3, and I go into this last one. It should work out. If not, just skip 2 if you're too close. I only skipped 2 here, going from the nose to the mouth again, so that's why mine worked out like that. So once you're done, right here where we attached, you can go right into that, do your slip stitch, fasten off with just a weaving tail. As far as the eyes go, I used 14 millimeter safety eyes, and I crocheted around, stuck the eye through. This I sewed down, but look, they look so bulbous. These ones I didn't sew down at all. The safety eyes are the only thing holding them on, and I think they look a lot better. So it's up to you what you want to do. Either way, we're going to crochet some, let's get him out of the way. We're going to crochet some eyes. This is so super duper quick and easy. You're going to make a magic ring, and you're going to put 6 single crochets in there. Pull this. I wouldn't worry too much about pulling it tight, because we actually, let me zoom back in. We actually want this to kind of be open a little bit. we got to stick a 14 mil eye through the hole. So I'm not using a stitch marker. Well, we're going to do a 1 single crochet increase. Go into your next stitch, slip stitch, fasten off. So it's your decision whether you need a sewing tail or not. I am not sewing mine on. I'm gonna let the safety eye do its thing. So you just need to weave in your ends. I want the eyeball in there just so I don't, it's pretty tight back here, so you don't really need to weave very far, but I want the eye back there just so I don't pull it too tight if you're doing it my way. Then you can just cut these pieces off. You have sharp scissors, and then we do it again. I have my 2 eyes done, and I got my backs already. So not a whole lot of this is going to go through or be sticking out from the other side. So it's all up to you where you want to put your eyes, obviously just before the mouth. If you wanted to just crochet these, which I think I'm going to do for the smaller kids, I'm just going to use my black to do my magic ring and my 6 single crochets, and then switch to white and do the increase instead of using the safety eyes. So then you're going to have to sew it on. And we can do the side fins first because we've got to make 2 of those. So we're going to start with a magic ring. We're going to put 6 single crochets in here. You're going to need a stitch marker. Those of you using your 4mm, please just stick to your 4mm. You don't need to switch to your 4.5. Your whole project was meant to be built with the 4mm. So let's mark our first stitch for our second row. The second row is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. And that's number 1 under your marker. So your next stitch gets the increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. And repeat. We need to start turning this, so we're going to start this right away. And if you've made slippers with me before, you understand what I'm doing here. If you haven't made them, fins turn. So they are angled away from, that's what helps propel the fish, right? Same with the dorsal is angled away from the head. So in order to achieve that, I had to use, I didn't have to, I chose to use 2 different stitches. So this next round is going to be weird if you've never been on my channel before. I'm a weirdo. I do weird stuff. But the outcome is generally good. That's number 1. We're going to do 5 single crochets. Your marker's number 1. This is my 5th single crochet. I got 4 stitches left. Those are going to be half doubles. So 4 half doubles. You can flip this guy around. The more you do the two different, the more angled it gets. So then, therefore, it turns, right? Your next round is just going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. So when you do single crochets in between your weirdo rows, it kind of tightens it right up, and it actually helps it turn. So that's my 2 single crochets, and then my increase of 2 single crochets in the same space will give you 12 stitches. With those 12 stitches, we're going to be weirdos again, and we're going to do 6 single crochets and 6 half double crochets. So number 1, that is 6 single crochets, and then we do 6 half doubles. So your next round is going to be 3 single crochets and an increase. That's number 1. 3 single crochets and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. This brings you up to 15 stitches. I'm going to stick this annoying little bugger down in here. Your next round is going to be 4 single crochets and an increase, and this will bring you up to 18 stitches. That's number 1. That's 4 single crochets, and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. Alright. We're going to do 2 rows of weird stuff this time. So you have 18 stitches, so easy peasy, 9 single crochets and then 9 half doubles. You're going to do that for 2 rows. So your last 2 rows are going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 18 stitches for 2 rows, and I'll see you on the other side. So that is my 2 rows. I'm going to fasten off. So you need a sewing tail. So we're going to whip stitch this shut, but as you can see, I'm kind of in the middle of everything. So easy peasy. I'm just going to use the front loops to pop over here to the side to whip stitch. So that's our side fin. So go ahead and make your second one. I'll put the pattern on my screen and I'll see you on the other side. So when you do go sew these on, they arc away from the head. So I just simply took my color thing, I laid this on its side, and I just did a whip stitch, but I did the whip stitch literally on both sides, just so it doesn't flop down all the time. So that's what mine look like. So the only thing left is the dorsal fin. The eyes, if I could make a suggestion, what I'm doing for the smaller ones, for the little kitties, I mean, not that this isn't a kid size, but I mean the little kitties, I'm putting buttons in here, just black buttons. I'm still making this, and I'm just gluing and then sewing the black button in there, and that way you can't feel it on the other side. But you could probably take a file and file that down, but I'm not sure how much it's felt. I don't wear shark slippers, so let's move on to the dorsal fin. So you need to make a magic ring of 6 single crochets. You're going to do, your next round is just going to be 6 single crochets, so it's going to be the same. And the reason I chose to do that was just to put a better point on top of it. So you can move that right side in if you want. And then we're going to get into our increase. So your next round is going to be 1 single crochet and an increase. So bringing you up to 9 stitches. It's 1 single crochet, and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. You'll repeat this 3 times. Well, 2 more times. Then your next round is just going to be 1 single crochet in each of these 9 stitches. Your next row is going to be 2 single crochets and an increase. It's number 1. That's 2 single crochets, and then your increase of 2 single crochets in the same space. Alright, we're going to get weirdo again in the next round. So the next round we're going to change from single crochet to half double, and we're going to increase all at the same time. So your first 3 stitches are going to be single crochets, so do 3 single crochets. Your next stitch you're going to put 2 single crochets in the same space. Then you're going to do 3 single crochets. Sorry, you're going to do 2 single crochets. I was on the wrong row. And then you're going to do a half double. Then you're going to do 2 half doubles in the next stitch. Then you're going to do 3 single, or half doubles. It's a 3 increase. Not a single crochet, it's half double. It's not a half double, it's a single. It's both. So this should give you 15 stitches. We're going to do the same weirdo stuff in the next row, but it's going to be a 4 increase. So you're going to do 4 single crochets. And then you're going to do an increase in the next stitch. Then you're going to do 3 single crochets. This is where I got screwed up. I was reading the wrong row. 3 single crochets, then a half double crochet, which brings us up to 4 stitches, and then 2 half doubles in the next stitch. And then you're going to do 4 half doubles in a increase. And now you should have 18 stitches. Your next round is just going to be 5 single crochets and an increase. All singles. Your last 2 rows just going to be 1 single crochet in what should be 21 stitches. So once you're done, you can fasten off. This got sewn on open, so or you do whatever you want, but mine's getting sewn on open, so I don't need anything to whip stitch. So again, the curve goes away from the head. So I sew mine on open just because I found it looked better. I've done it both ways. So the dorsal fin kind of sits back. It's not quite in between these fins. It sits back a little bit. If you want to be anatomically correct. Which I like to be. So again, I'm just going to whip stitch. And I actually just weave up into the tail just because I want to pull that knot down that I just made, mainly. There we go, all done. Let's find my foot. Put my foot in there. go. It'd look better again, like I said, if it had a ankle. But I don't have an ankle. And there we go. Thanks for joining me, guys. I'll see you in the next video. We're going to be doing smaller sizes. So subscribe so you don't miss out.